Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, the only podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. I am Deena Bosworth, Director of Governmental Affairs for MAC, and I am subbing as the host today because our Executive Director, Steve Curry, is out of the office, and we wish him a very happy birthday. But we want to talk to you today a little bit about what happened this week in Lansing, and that is the governor's fiscal year 24 budget recommendation. And holy cow, was it a budget recommendation. Just a little bit of an overview for everyone, and then I'm going to turn it over to Madeline, Fata, and Samantha Gibson in our office, who are government affairs associates, to talk about some specific line items that the governor recommended. But to start it out, gargantuan budget, $79 billion budget recommendation. And in it is all kinds of spending. She's recommending spending down the $9 billion surplus we've been sitting on. But luckily, still putting some money away so that we can build up the rainy day fund, put a little money in savings. But yeah, huge spending recommendations in this budget. Everything from, fantastic increase in revenue sharing, which I'll talk about a little bit in detail, money for some of our priorities, which is great news for us. Some investment in infrastructure, lots and lots of economic development, and a whole bunch of money for schools and kids, that I think, will probably make a huge difference, especially to a lot of parents. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit on revenue sharing, because she recommended a 10% increase in county revenue sharing. Well, sort of 17% actually, which is fantastic. 5% regular increase in and ongoing in our bottom line revenue sharing, 5% one-time money. And then she recommended an additional 7% in revenue sharing dollars for fiscal year 24 to go toward public safety. Now, traditionally, revenue sharing has not had strings attached to it like that, other than the reporting. So this is a little odd to say that, well, we're going to give you 17%, but 7% of it needs to go for a specific purpose. Never going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I think that's great, but that's not traditionally what revenue sharing has been. It's usually been discretionary revenue for counties to decide where they want to allocate those funds. So we'll see how that is going forward. We'll talk about it, in our internal committees and with our board, and kind of come up with what we would like to see that look like. But still, overall, fantastic increase for us. And we really like it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to still push for the revenue sharing trust fund, because we believe that, that should be even more than what she's recommending. But again, not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. She recommended 10% last year, the same 5 and 5. It was during the legislative process that they cut that back. So we only actualized a 5% increase in our revenue sharing last year. Overall, very happy with her support for local governments. All right, enough about that. Other priorities. Sam, kick it off. She did address some of our other priorities. You want to give a little rundown on where some of that money is?
Yeah, so I'd just like to start off by saying, as far as public health, public safety, judiciary investments go, this is a great budget in that regard. And thankfully, we did have a few of our priorities addressed. Deena, you mentioned the 7% of revenue sharing for public safety. So that's public safety employee recruitment, retention, training, infrastructure improvements, you name it. There's also 4 of the Juvenile Justice Task Force's recommendations within this budget. One being DHHS juvenile justice programming reimbursements, which is through the Michigan Child Care Fund. Community programming is reimbursed from the state. And her suggestion is at 75%. It's currently at 50. There's two different reimbursement streams. I won't get into all of it, but we're looking at 75% there. So that's wonderful. Another one of the recommendations is to establish a juvenile justice services division within the state court administrator's office. So that's $2 million ongoing. She also recommended establishing the Office of Child Advocate Juvenile Justice Services, which expands the Office of the Children's Ombudsman to include juvenile justice services in addition to the child welfare services they provide. That's a $2 million ongoing recommendation. And then creation of the State Appellate Defender Office. Well, it's already in existence, but adding juvenile justice cases to the Appellate Defender's Office. And that's around $557,000. Another one of our priorities, which I am thrilled to see, is an increase in the daily rate paid to foster care parents. So it's going to be 19 million in total, 8 million of which her suggestion is to be ongoing, which is an 8% increase in the foster care parent maintenance rate.
That's awesome.
It's wonderful. And again, that's one of our priorities in alleviating the juvenile justice bed crisis. So we're very happy to see that. Other incentives for foster care parents, which again alleviates the bed crisis, is just foster care parent support. So there's 15 million for that.
Yeah, that's like to just kind of give them a break, right?
Yes.
If they're sort of overwhelmed, and we're going to have support services to help them out.
Support services, temporary relief to foster parents, and it also assists in keeping licensed foster care homes, keeping them open. We've also got a $30 million increase in the base funding for local public health services, which is an almost 60% increase in supporting those public health services, with a main focus on recruiting and retaining behavioral health workers. So we're thrilled about that.
I wonder, does that really get us to them, the state kicking in a 50% of the cost of the public health department? We can look at it later, but you know, I know that that's been a huge priority for many of our counties for a long time, just because that's, you know, an unfunded mandate, but her throwing money in there is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it addresses the 50%, but like you said, not going to kick a gift horse in the mouth.
Nope. Going to be happy about it. We're happy about it.
Negotiations to come, so you know, we'll see. So yeah, there's plenty of other recommendations within this budget that address public health and safety, but those are the ones that address our priorities. If anyone has questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to walk you through the rest of them.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a ton in this budget. Madeline, there's all kinds of, you know, infrastructure stuff in there, other items in the budget. What you got for us?
Well, she spoke at length about electric vehicles. She's made it very clear that electric vehicles are our future. And she proposed $45 million for local governments to convert their fleets to electric vehicles. She also proposed $65 million to expand charging infrastructure, both commercially and at home. $48.4 million for a sales tax exemption for the purchase of electric vehicles.
Is that, but that's not forever. That's just over a few years, right?
That is a temporary program. She's just trying to incentivize consumers to go out and buy those electric vehicles.
Yeah, I kind of wonder how that works. Does that build out happen first of the charging stations, or is that charging station build out going to try and be simultaneous with an increase in purchase of EV vehicles? Like, it just seems like that's got to be balanced out a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, she didn't go into that type of detail during the presentation, but that is an interesting timeline to think about. And I believe this line item was in the education budget, but she also proposed $150 million to convert school buses to electric vehicles. I mean, she is just all in on EVs.
I'm sorry. Backtrack just a little bit. I'm going to put you on the spot for sure. But we just participated in a press conference.
Correct.
Last month and talked about the future of road funding and the lack of contribution from electric vehicles to support the wear and tear on the roads, and how that's
Yeah.
kind of sort of being subsidized by those of us who are still driving gas powered vehicles. Was there any change in that? Any recommendations that have, now we're going to give them a sales tax exemption to buy the vehicle, but nothing about contribution to
No.
road funding?
This presentation, I mean, she focused a lot on the types of vehicles we've got driving on our roads, but not a ton on the roads themselves. Most of the money in the transportation budget is going toward ongoing programs, 124 million for debt service. But no, not a ton of focus on investing in our roads. And yes, currently our roads are primarily funded through gas tax, registration fees. Electric vehicles aren't paying the gas tax, they're paying reduced registration fees. So we need to think about how our roads are being funded moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. I hear that. Yeah, a little worried about that. But she still has money in there for some infrastructure, right? I mean,
And there's a lot of federal dollars through the IIJA still. She's looking at water infrastructure projects a lot in the Eagle budget, replacing some lead service lines, money toward water treatment facility upgrades, stormwater management, that type of stuff. Also in the transportation budget, there's money towards a bridge bundling program, but that's also not a new program. That's an ongoing thing. But yeah, so there will be some infrastructure investments, definitely. But
and there's already kind of a plan for, this is what we want to tackle as far as roads go. It's just nothing new.
Yes.
Right. I mean, there's still, lots of federal money coming for infrastructure, the IIJA money, you know, so that's still all allocated, but just no new part. Okay. All right. Sorry. Totally.
And another item from the budget that she spoke very little about was broadband. And I think that's because we have a ton of federal dollars headed our way. I believe there was one line item in the Leo budget, 200 million for Michigan regional empowerment programs, but that includes affordable housing, manufacturing, education, workforce development, and broadband. But outside of that, there was very little for broadband expansion.
Well, I think that probably just comes automatically once we just determine how much the state of Michigan's going to get after the maps were done. Yeah. A ton of economic development money though. Housing, economic development, workforce development, expansion of, community college, that GAP program. So taking community college students that are, 21 as opposed to 25 and helping them get re-educated in that program. She talked about free school lunches for every child. Wow. 4-year-olds, pre-K, completely free and paid for is another one of those proposals. She talked about $500 million a year. I think that's what it was, $500 million a year into the SOAR program to attract large-scale business development. Yeah, lots of housing. So not just housing in the supplemental, but housing, subsidies recommended in this current year budget. Are we missing anything? I'm sure we are. The budget's huge.
I think it's the biggest budget proposal ever.
Yeah.
I think that was a headline I read yesterday, that it's the most amount of money a governor has ever proposed.
Yeah, it's impressive, and they cover all kinds of different areas of focus. And now that the Democrats are in charge of the House and the Senate and the governor's office, we've said this before, but I think there was just a lot of pent up energy to put some effort into the program or money into some of the things that they've just not been able to fund before, or necessarily get through when there was a split party decision making. At the same time, I mean, this week, you guys know this, we're watching the legislature kind of go back and forth on, how big the earned income tax credit is going to be. And the kind of relief that that's going to give to, working families, lower income working families. The pension tax rollback. They're talking about giving out $180 checks to every person in the state, just to send some of that surplus money back to everybody. There's just money moving everywhere. I have to watch and see what that actually means for, the next several fiscal year budgets. I've been around a long time. Feels like a long time. Probably shouldn't say that, but it's been a long time. And then, you just watch the cyclical nature of revenue and then, we get back into a recession and we're going to be slashing a lot of these programs. So hopefully there's enough money and the state grows enough to maintain it. Part of the reason for the investment in all these economic development programs, education programs. So hopefully we can sustain it, but it is a little shocking how much is being spent. But hey, it's to the benefit of our residents for sure, right? Sammy got all of that investment in public health and juvenile justice and foster care and public safety, which is amazing. That huge investment in county revenue sharing and different infrastructure projects. See how that goes. Oh. All right. You guys have anything else to add? Well, we should back up. Say yes today while we're recording this is Steve's birthday, but tomorrow is Sam's birthday. Yay! Happy birthday!
Thank you. Happy birthday, Steve.
All right. Well, for everybody who's out there, just remember if you have any questions on, what's happening in the budget or different line items, don't hesitate to call us. We'd be happy to go over anything that's happening, and we'll keep you updated as we go through the process.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.